Hey guys, Andrew here with Funnel Boom, and in this video we're going to go through a couple different approaches to setting up your new Facebook pixel. So we're going to talk about an easy approach, a standard approach, and then what I would consider the optimal approach. But let's get started by looking at the easy setup. So in the easy setup, what we're going to do is we're going to rely mostly on URL-based logic for defining our custom conversions and audiences. And the benefit of this is it's lower initial effort, but your ongoing management of this is going to be tedious, and I'll show you why in just a moment. But even with this easy setup, one thing we're going to want to do, and we'll talk through how to do this, is we're still going to want to migrate over our existing, the old conversion pixels. If you still use those, you're going to want to map those over to the new Facebook pixel syntax so that you can have redundancy until Facebook removes old conversion pixels from the ad system altogether, right? So we've seen that message in Facebook Ad Manager that late 2016 they're going to remove the old conversion pixels, but for the time being, a lot of folks still have campaigns or ad sets that are optimizing to these old conversion pixels. So for now, we want to kind of give you redundancy between the new pixel and the old pixels so that you can slowly migrate over without having to stop all your campaigns and duplicate them and set up new ones based on the new pixel. Obviously you can do that, but this will at least give you some flexibility there. So who is this easy setup for? If you're not comfortable with Google Tag Manager, and then I say yet, I fully believe that Google Tag Managers are a really awesome skill for any marketer, especially if you're dealing with advertising and tagging and so forth. So if you're not yet comfortable with GTM, you're allergic to coding, so you're not a big fan of coding, you just don't like doing it, don't like dealing with it, and you have a fairly straightforward sales funnel, right? So if you have an e-commerce site, don't even bother looking at this kind of approach because it's not going to work for you. So if you have a fairly straightforward sales funnel with not a lot of different products and so forth, we're looking for kind of like a simple website here. And we'll go through an example in a minute. So I'll show you what that will look like. This was for you if you need to have a unique confirmation or success page for pretty much all of your key events. And when we say events, we're talking about someone opting into your email list. We're talking about purchases, all of those key marketing events. Now, one note here is that, if you elect to use this up front, you can always start with this and then you can migrate to a more full-fledged setup later. So if you choose to go this route for now, this is fine. You can later you can go back and kind of build things out further. But I will say that we know how these kind of things get put off, especially when it comes to kind of like what I would consider the back end of your funnel. It's always easy to put that off. So if you want to have a little bit more of a robust setup right out of the gate, check out the standard setup, which we'll talk about in just a minute. So the pros and cons. The pros of the easy setup, it's quick and easy initial setup. Again, very little custom coding, and we're going to use URL-based conversion tracking, which is familiar for most marketers. The cons are that your audiences and conversions are going to take a little bit longer to set up in the Facebook Ad Manager interface relative to if you were using events, which we will utilize in the standard setup. You're going to have to be reliant on yourself being diligent, or someone on your team on ongoing maintenance of these conversions and the audiences as your marketing actions change or you add new marketing actions, right? And we'll see why again when we go through the example. Now, this only works if you have unique confirmation pages to signify success of each event. So if you have things like a success event on a button click or form submission events, and then of course the big con or the big kind of disadvantage here is like this is not going to be as powerful or as flexible for targeting and optimization. Let's take a look at the steps of what we're going to do. So the first thing I want you to do, and we talk about this in the blog post at Digital Marketer, which we'll have the link to in the description, but the first thing you're going to want to do as you prepare to migrate over to the new pixel is go back and diagram out your funnel and your key actions, right? So do this visually. I'll show you an example of one just a moment. This is kind of like my example here. So I've got my funnel going bottom to top here. So I got my blog post at the bottom, my lead magnet next, my tripwires, and then my core offer. And I just draw it out kind of high level, simple like this, a visual way to see the funnel. So we'll start with that. We want to build that out. Just be sure that we have an inventory of all the key actions that we want to track. Next, you're going to fill out your spreadsheet with all the old conversion pixels that you need, along with the details on each event or like each of these marketing actions. So we'll look at the Google sheet that I'm referring to in just a second. The third thing we're going to do is we're going to consolidate the migration code. So all the code that we'll need to migrate over the old conversion pixels, if that's applicable for you. And then we're going to go into the site. We're actually going to replace the old Facebook remarketing tag with the new pixel, the new, what I call the base pixel that will fire on all your pages. And then we're going to go remove your old conversion pixel code and replace it with the new Facebook pixel syntax. Again, this is only applicable if you want to migrate over those old conversion pixels. And then you can test and debug with the Facebook pixel helper. So let's do this live. Let's do a little demo of those steps. I'm not going to go all the way through number 6, but I'm going to kind of at least get you started here. Okay, so now let's get started with this example. Now going back to our step slide, we see that number 1 is we want to diagram our funnel and the key actions. So I put together an example illustration of a simple funnel over here, and this is for a made-up website I call Meal War. So Meal War sells professional, delicious meal plans for a variety of diets and lifestyles. Now, for this example, we're going to focus on the left side here. Let's ignore the right side, the second core offer and the second side of the funnel. Let's focus on this vertical only. So you can see my diagram, my drawing here goes from blog posts, which I don't go through and explicitly name every single blog post. Really where I want to start to kick in the details is underneath lead magnets. So I've got my 4 lead magnets here, and then I show how they roll up to my 2 tripwires, and then those roll up to my core offer at the top, which is called Paleo Prince, full month meal plan with cooking how to. So these are all like recipe and video, I guess, like meal plan based products. Again, completely made up. So I don't know if you're a fan of alliteration, but if you are, then you'll really enjoy these products. So we've got our drawing here, right? We don't need to go into too much detail about where these lead magnets are, URLs and stuff. We're going to do that in the next step. So I'm going to have this piece of paper, just kind of sketch this out, lay it off to the side. And then our second step is we're going to fill out this spreadsheet with all of the event details. And then also we're going to map any of the old conversion pixels that we need to migrate over to each of the events. So let's show how to do that. So this is inside of Google Sheets, and this sheet is linked to in the blog post. You can grab it there. I've got a couple example rows filled out for you here at the top. But for the easy setup, you really only need to fill out columns B through F. So I've got them colored orange. And then if you're doing standard setup, you're going to need to do G through J as well. But columns K through M are actually calculated values. So you don't have to type these out. It'll auto-fill those after you finish the appropriate columns over here. All right, so enough about the spreadsheet. Now let's start to fill this thing out. So I'm looking at my drawing here, my illustration. I'm going to start at the bottom with this perfect hamburger lead magnet, right? So now what I need to know about this lead magnet is how can I signify, or what page signifies success or confirmation that they opted in for that lead magnet. Now remember that for the easy setup, one of the requirements is that you need to have separate thank you pages, confirmation pages for all of these events, because we're completely going to be reliant on URL patterns here. So with that being said, looking at this perfect hamburger example, I've kind of come up with my URL and all that good stuff. So going back to the sheet, let me show you how I would fill this out. So the first column here, event type, it's going to be a lead, right? They're opting in for a lead magnet. Then under column C, event description, I'm just going to put something, you can put whatever you want here. It's like, however you describe it. I put opt in for the perfect hamburger lead magnet. Then the next column, when, where the event should fire. Now, if this is a thank you page or a page view event, we want to put in the path or the full URL, whichever you prefer. I've just got my path here. Oops. And if you have issues with it dropping you down a cell, just paste it in the formula bar up here instead of in the cell itself. So I know that when someone opts in for this lead magnet, they're going to go to this thank you page. That's thanks-hamburger-guide. Again, this is all made up. So now I know also that right now I have a campaign running with the objective being to get people to opt in for this lead magnet. And I know that when I go into my ad manager account, that the old conversion pixel that's assigned to this event is this ID here. Okay. So again, I'm just making these up, but you should, I think you know what I'm talking about. You can get the pixel ID from inside the pixel screen inside of Facebook Ad Manager for your old conversion pixels. So all we need here is the ID. That's all we need. We don't need anything else. Now, the next column F, old conversion pixel, currency, and value. Now, you might not have set these to anything in the past. You don't have to set these here. So if you don't have anything set, you can just leave it blank. Or what I do is I just do, just to be safe, I take currency and I'm going to paste this in the formula bar. Currency USD, value 0. So once we paste that in, you'll see over here in column L, we now have some auto-generated event code that's going to give us the script that we need. Get rid of that extra space. So once I pasted that in, I have over here in column M some auto-generated event tracking code that we're going to use later. So it's already formatted properly. I didn't do like all of the edge case checking for special characters and stuff, but this should work in most cases. You know, the design pattern here, let's take a closer look at this, is the parameter name. This is really hard to see. Let's see if we can pull this one down. Parameter name, currency, then a colon, and then your value here in quotes, since this is the name of the currency, comma, the next parameter, colon, that value, and then the last parameter doesn't need a comma after it. So I just took this, copied it, pasted it in here. Now, if you're doing this manually, if you're typing this in manually, if you need to add an extra line inside of a Google Sheet cell, you hold Alt and hit Enter. Because if you just keep typing, it's obviously not going to change the line. So Alt Enter gives you a new line inside of a cell. All right, so that's our lead event associated with this perfect hamburger vid recipe, right? So we know that now we have the most important things about this entry are we want to be sure we get this URL correct because we're going to use that later. And we also want to be sure that we generate this code over here to the right. But we're just going to go step by step through the funnel and fill these out for each one of these steps. Now I'm going to skip ahead to the tripwire to show you what a purchase would look like. So the next event here, I'm going to do purchase, and then my description, I'm going to do purchases, banging, barbecue, tripwire. And my thank you page is confirmation dash banging dash BBQ. That's the path, right? Because we're usually going to use URL contains, I think, here. If you want to be more explicit, again, feel free to put the full URL in, but I'm just lazy right now. So I'm going to go and grab my old conversion pixel ID associated with this purchase from my account. I'll paste that here. And then again, this one specifically for purchases, you probably will have a currency and value assigned to it. So I'll paste that in there. So we see that we have, it's worth $7, and I'll just paste that in there. All right, so then again, we see that our code gets generated in cells L and M. And once you go through, you'll have all of this built out for every one of these events. So every lead magnet will have a new row in this spreadsheet for every tripwire, and then finally for our core offer. And no matter if they're a tripwire or a core product, your event type is going to be purchase. We're not going to differentiate those in this type of setup. So going back to our steps. So we're going to fill out spreadsheet with all those conversion pixels that you would need to port over. We've done that along with details on where the event occurs. All right, we've done that. Now we're going to consolidate the migration code that we'll need and where it should be added. So after we get done adding all of these to the site, these URLs are where we're going to have to go back into the website and remove the old conversion pixel code and add this new script tag once we update the base pixel as well. So this step, you don't really have to do much. Just like know that you're going to need to kind of go through these one by one and switch things out. The fourth step is we're going to replace, if you still have the old Facebook remarketing tag, which I don't know if you still have that or not. I think some people still have that as a separate remarketing tag, but you want to be sure that you update it to the new Facebook tag base, the base pixel tag. So in your theme, in your WordPress theme or whatever CMS you're using, you probably have a site where you can put in analytics or conversion code and apply it across the site. So set it to fire on all pages. And that's where you're going to want to get rid of your old Facebook remarketing tag. And you're going to want to go ahead and drop in that base pixel that we reviewed earlier in the post, that block, right? And then next, on the appropriate pages, we want to go through individually. We want to add the new pixel code that we generated through the sheet here. And again, like I can't test this formula against all the edge cases to be sure there's no syntax errors, but this will at least get you started. If you pass this to a developer, they'll be able to look at it and see if there's any kind of syntax problems, but it should work the majority of the time. What we're going to do on those pages is, like, let's say, for instance, this page, thanks hamburger guide. I'll go into that page in WordPress or whatever my CMS is, and I want to get rid of my old conversion tracking pixel code and replace it with this. Now you can place this code really anywhere in the page. Ideally, number one, it has to be after your base pixel fires. So generally, like as a rule of thumb, I would apply it at the bottom or close to the bottom of the page. You can do it either way. If you're 100% sure that your base tag is already fired in the head of the page, you can add this towards the beginning of the page, or again, to be safe, just add it towards the end of the page. And we would go through one by one and just go ahead and add those new pixel code snippets, get rid of the old ones. And then the last step is we want to be sure that everything's working properly. So go through and test with Facebook Pixel Helper, which is the Chrome extension that Facebook put out, that when you load the page, it shows the pixel that loads and the events that fire. Now, one thing I will say is, like, there are better ways to check these things relative to using Facebook Pixel Helper, but that'll be a topic for a separate day. It's kind of a whole nother discussion in and of itself. Now, after we've tested and debugged all of our tags just to be sure they're working with Facebook Pixel Helper, we also want to go ahead and set up our conversions and our audiences that connect to these tags, right? So the tagging in and of itself doesn't really do too much outside of fire your old pixels. But if we want to start leveraging the new capabilities of the Facebook Pixel, we're going to have to set up some custom conversions and some audiences based on the new tag fires. Now, you might already have some of these audiences set up if you're already doing URL-based audience definitions in your Ad Manager account. So you might be able to save some time there, but we're going to go through this one by one. Now, the first thing that we want to do, going back to our pixel or our funnel picture, is we want to decide how we're going to group our conversions, right? So I could create a general lead custom conversion for anyone who does any of these actions, or I could create a separate one for the individual opt-ins, or both. So we say here we're going to do action level, which would be like lead, purchase, specific, or both. For now, what I'm going to do is show you how to do a kind of consolidated one for all lead events, and then it should make sense of how to do a more specific one if you wanted to. So I'm in Ad Manager account. I've gone to Tools, Custom Conversions, Create Custom Conversion. Now what I'm going to do here is URL contains, and then I got to look back at my Google Sheet where we filled this out. So I know I have thanks hamburger guide, but then I also have these other thank you pages for the other lead magnets. So I'm going to do URL contains thanks hamburger guide, hit tab to autofill that or to complete it, or thanks super steak, or thanks eat fudge, or thanks paleo carrot cake. So that covers all of our lead magnets here. So we're going to choose category, lead, next, and I'll call this all leads. paleo prints funnel or something along those lines. Now you can set conversion value if you want. I leave mine, I don't set one because I don't assign value for leads typically. And then click create, and that'll create your custom conversion there. Now again, if you want to do them separately, you could create one for all so that you could optimize for any lead. Or if you want to do them specifically, you just go through and get rid of the or statements and do them one at a time, right? In this case, this would be, instead of all leads, this would be hamburger guide leads. So that's pretty much it for the conversions. Now let's take a look at the audiences. So again, this is where it's going to get a little bit tedious, and you might already have a lot of these retargeting audiences set up. One thing to note here is that if you migrate over to the new pixel and you're using URL-based audiences, you don't need to go back in and reset things up, because the URL-based stuff, even if you're transferring over from the old remarketing pixel to the new Facebook pixel, it'll still continue to fill, all the data is still going to the same place. So if you have audiences that are already in existence based on URL rules, they'll still continue to exist. But let's look at how we would actually set one of these audiences up. So for our example, let's say we want to retarget people who have opted in either for Perfect Hamburger or Super Steak and not bought my tripwire of Banging Barbecue for $7. So you can see I have these arrows here, but these two lead magnets are kind of designed to feed into that tripwire. So let's look at how we build that. Okay, to set this up, what we're going to do is we're going to go into Ad Manager, and then we're going to go to Tools, Audiences, and then Create Audience, and select Custom Audience. Now we're going to be working from website traffic. We're going to do people who visit specific web pages but not others, because again, we're working off URLs here. So my hamburger guide confirmation page is thanks hamburger guide. And then my super steak is thanks super steak. Then we're going to exclude people who hit the confirmation page for the Bangin' Barbecue. And I'm going to go put that thank you page URL there. 30 days include past website traffic. So I'll say, let's call this audience WC. WCA. Let's call this Banging BBQ leads not purchased tripwire. That's not the best naming convention there, but for now it'll work. You can fill in your description if you want. And yeah, that's about it. So we would go in and create this audience, and then this is where it does get a little bit tedious here, because you're going to have to kind of splinter some of these audiences out based on the level of granularity you're looking for. So I might have to create this one that's specifically for Banging Barbecue leads that haven't purchased the tripwire. I might also have to go in and create one for any leads who haven't purchased either of the tripwires, if I wanted to run like a carousel ad with two cards, one for each tripwire. And then for the core offer, I'm going to have to create a separate exclusion audience and all that good stuff. So again, the easy setup, the benefit is that it helps you get off the ground pretty quickly and get going. And it's fairly straightforward in terms of the implementation. But the problem is the scalability and the flexibility, the segmentation power is a little more manual. I mean, imagine if we added another lead magnet here associated with Bangin' Barbecue. You'd have to go back into Ad Manager, and then you'd have to add the URL to this audience. You have to go back and edit our custom conversion. So that's really where that tedious part comes in. And if you're interested, again, I highly suggest everyone at least check out the standard setup, which we're going to talk about in the next video. And we're going to leverage events in that situation, which will help get rid of some of that pain of having to really rely on URLs and so forth. So that's it for this video. Thanks for checking it out. If you haven't seen the blog post, go to digitalmarketer.com and you can check out the blog post there. We'll put the link in the description. Appreciate it.